purpose. Yeah? How do you find a sense of purpose when you've retired? And how do you maintain that sense of purpose when you're retired? This is a question that I get asked a lot on this channel. And I did do a video a few months ago before I actually retired about my fears of finding motivation after retirement. And that's all very much connected with finding a purpose. But as I said, how do you find that purpose? How do you maintain that purpose? And to be honest, now I'm over 2 months into this retirement. These are some of the issues that I've been trying to address and deal with. So I'm going to share my thoughts on this and also maybe provide some possible strategies you might be able to apply to your life if finding a purpose and maintaining a purpose in retirement is something that you struggle with like me. There's a thing called the retirement paradox. On one hand, you're looking forward to retirement with the kind of boundless time, no structure, all the kind of pressures of corporate life or work life, whatever, no longer kind of constricting you. Life is just full of freedom. That's the kind of vision you have for retirement. And that's why you want to retire, to kind of get rid of the structure that corporate life, that work life kind of enforces on you, and it feels like a trap or a cage, and you can't wait to break free of that cage. But the paradox is, with all that freedom, with all that time, your life is in danger of lacking meaning and just wandering off aimlessly, and you becoming a bit comfortable with that. And slowly but surely, you kind of drift off into a situation of kind of ennui and listlessness and all of that. Then you start craving some kind of structure and purpose, everything you were trying to escape from in the first place. And so that's the real paradox of retirement. On one hand, you're trying to escape the structures and the cage of work life and everything you resented about that. And on the other hand, though, it kind of kept you in line and gave you a purpose, or at least a direction in life. And so when you suddenly yank that away from yourself, especially if you do it abruptly, you're like a balloon that's just been let go of by a child. And whilst there's something wonderful in the freedom of that kind of balloon, it eventually can just drift off into nothingness. And that's not what you retired for, to just sort of slowly drift off like an old African elephant heading to the kind of mythical elephant's graveyard somewhere. No, this is meant to be another step in life. And so how do you manage that paradox? How do you find purpose? And more importantly, as I'm sort of struggling with to a certain degree, how do you maintain that purpose? And I talked about previously about how I might combat this before I was retired. Well, now I'm living it, so the theory is often very different from the practice. And now I'm living it. Maintaining the theory is easier said than done. What I'm talking about is, when I talked about my fear of having no motivation, was the importance of having some kind of structure. But as I said, that's the great irony. Surely one of the reasons we got rid of work is to get rid of that structure. And so it's finding a right kind of balance between having a purpose and having a structure, but at the same time, not having a structure that's just going to kind of enclose you and trap you in. On one hand, I kind of thought, well, no, I can find a motivation, I can find a purpose. You know, my hobby is making these videos and stuff like that. Or there's projects I want to do, and maybe I want to, travel more. So I had all these plans and all these ideas. Then I hit retirement, and inevitably, the first few weeks was like a honeymoon period. It's like brilliant, no work. I enjoyed the freedom of actually not doing anything for a while. It was marvellous. I absolutely had no regrets about it. Now I'm a few months in, and once I've tried to maintain and do some of the projects I set out, there are quite a few projects that I'd sort of planned and hoped to do that have just sort of, I don't know, they just seem to be flapping in the wind, and I've not really kind of focused on them. And part of it is because I didn't want to bind myself to a kind of severe structure with new projects. Okay, I've retired. As somebody cynically said in one of my comments, all people do when they retire is replace all the work stuff with other stuff. So what's the point? That is a little bit cynical, but I kind of get what you mean. You don't just want to fill that vacuum, that emptiness, back up to the brim with projects and plans and schemes that end up draining all your time. Part of the reason that you chose to retire is to be able to relax a bit. So unless those things that you fill up the gaps with give you some form of relaxation, then yeah, I can see the point. You are just replacing all the stuff you did in work with other stuff now in retirement. Another great view. You see the train there? And what I wanted to do in regards finding a purpose and finding a structure was to sort of let it happen organically. I didn't want to be too severe or too restraining with a structure. My life has a kind of structure already anyway. My son is with me half the week. I have to take him to school at the end of the week, pick him up at the end of the week. So there's a structure there. But the first few days of the week, less structure. And that's fine. And initially I thought, yeah, I'll just let any kind of structure that already exists happen organically. And, you know, life will settle down like a snow globe. Life will settle down into routine. But the danger is, if you don't find a purpose early, or you don't focus on some sort of key projects and stuff you might want to do, what you're doing is when you shake that globe, those things aren't there to settle down. I think you need to build them into the system before you shake that snow globe, as it were. And so this idea of letting things happen kind of organically, oh dear, it looks like we've got company, ladies and gentlemen. Oh dear, cow's getting a bit excited over there. Well, they're coming towards me. There's something scary about cows. I'm just checking they haven't come to the gate. Oh, they have, and he's still getting frisky. I suppose it is spring. Yeah, so this idea that somehow a structure and purpose would just happen organically after a while. It sort of has, but the problem is there were not enough elements in my life since retirement to kind of stabilize as any kind of sensible structure. Again, what I'm talking about here is having a purpose, but that purpose not involving so much of a structure that it completely undermines the point of you retiring in the first place. It's a balance. That's the great paradox. One solution that I was thinking about is there are some things in life, boring things, housework, the weekly shop, which are not overburdensome, are not difficult, but perhaps you could make them a habit, put them in the diary or put them in your weekly structure so that you just know, oh yeah, it's Monday. I mean, you've got all time in the world. It's not as though you're trying to cram it in. Monday, oh, I'll just do the housework, I'll do the hoovering Monday morning or whatever. Again, it's not overburdensome. You know, it's not a smart target, you know. Well, it is a sort of smart target. It's small, measurable, attainable, results-driven, time-driven. Yeah, no, it's not a smart target. This is not the corporate world. What I'm saying is it's not a major burden in life. So what I'm trying to do is say, I don't know, it's to say Monday, housework, in the morning, you know, it's only an hour maybe, take me an hour if that. It almost becomes a habit. I do my exercises at least 3 times a week. Again, it's a habit now, get it into a habit that it happens. It just gives a bit of structure to my life, you know, and then, you know, the weekly shop, make it a thing, make it a Wednesday morning, a certain time, there we are. And so there's a few key points in your life, okay? Just little tent pegs in your life. You don't have to be precious about these. These aren't sacrosanct. The world isn't going to end if you don't do them. It's just nice to have a few little markers in your week, specifically for those times when, as I've found this week, a couple of days, I got into some bad habits. I was lying in bed. I should have got out of bed, but I made the fatal mistake of reaching over to my phone, which I purposely keep away from arm's length, and go straight onto Instagram Reels and start doom scrolling. Before you know it, an hour's gone by, and it's terrible. And it just destroys any motivation, where I would have been much better off just getting up at 8 o'clock rather than just lolling in bed until 9:30, which often has happened now the last couple of days, just because I didn't have a sense of, okay, what am I going to do today? And it was all part of this spirit of mine of trying to do things organically and go with the flow. And I'm all for that. I'm all for going with the flow. But sometimes it's not enough just going with the flow. Just having a few little mini 10 pults on a weekly basis that aren't precious, that aren't sacrosanct, that become a habit, but you're not going to get upset if you don't do them, I think is quite useful for those times when you kind of don't have any projects in mind, completely lack any motivation. At least you're doing something to tick the days by. The second major thing, I think, those projects and plans. I had so many projects and plans that I'd planned to do when I retired. and many of which I haven't even started. As I said, they're just flailing in the wind. I've never got round to it. I've got so many ideas, so many concepts and things I want to do, so many projects. Yeah, I talk about them, or to myself. I never get on and plan it, and that's what you got to do with your mini projects. I think you need to plan them. Again, it's not a case of just taking all the things that you used to do at work and now suddenly do them in retirement in terms of managing a project and all that kind of things. No, it's about taking those things that you did at work you might have enjoyed, which might have been planning a project, setting out that project, achieving that project, and the satisfaction of achieving that project. Yeah, those were the positives. The negatives is, feeling pressured to do it, that you had to do it, or that there was, other people demanding that you did it. The real satisfaction comes from your own self-achievement. So if you can take those positives, I think, from the workplace, those ones that motivated you on a personal level, and apply it to personal projects that mean something to you, that means that the outcome of doing those projects will be even greater satisfaction. But in order to do that, you need to plan. So one of the solutions, I think, is to plan those projects out a bit and actually structure them in your life. Simple things like, I've got to clear out the garage, something I plan to do within the first month of retirement. Haven't even done it. In fact, if anything, I've just added to junk in the garage. It's something I can plan to do. Again, don't make it overburdensome. Don't make it feel like a chore and all of that. Structure it in a way that you're comfortable to do it over time, but structure it, give it a structure, give it a sense of, okay, I need to do this and this is when I'm going to do it. Spread it over a little bit longer time than you would perhaps if somebody was paying you to do it, and all of those things. Take your time. Again, it shouldn't feel like a burden. That's the whole point of retirement. If you wanted things to feel like a burden, you would have stayed in your job. If you didn't mind structure caging you in, you would have stayed at work. These are about finding the positive things about projects and the positive things about structures that are loose enough to make you feel free and have all the benefits of retirement, but at the same time, just keep you on track. So that's one of the things, big projects like that. Plan them out, set them out, decide how you're going to do them, when you're going to do them, write it down. Sometimes it helps. I've started taking notes, going back to old school, pen and a paper, yeah, my pen and a notebook. The old school approach of writing things down helps you sort of formulate them in your head and stuff like that. The other thing I wanted to do was maybe travel a bit, but again, just talked about it, not doing anything about it. So again, I've started writing down and planning, and I have a plan, and maybe you can hold me accountable to it. In the next month, I plan to visit a country I've never been to before for a short break. And again, this replaces buying stuff. So instead of buying things for that kind of simple gratification, I want to buy experiences. And so I plan to go away. If I haven't done a video about where I'm going in the next 4 weeks, I want you to let me know in the comments down below. So look out for that. You've got to plan these things. And I know it feels counterintuitive. This is not why you're retired. But you've got to remember, these are the purposes in life that you want to do. Yeah, this is the purpose in life that you've chosen, not someone else, not because there's a corporate deadline, not because you're towing the corporate line or the factory line. This is your purpose, therefore it's your project, and the results will be your satisfaction, not for the benefit of anyone else. And the motivation, as I said, that you'll get out of that should, and I'm hoping, will be far greater than the motivation you might get when you're doing it for someone else. That's a kind of a useful strategy that you can apply to kind of maintain that purposefulness. As I said, it's a delicate balance between having some kind of structure to keep you in line. It's to keep you in line that when you start drifting off, to one side, or you start losing, you might already be focused on projects and stuff like that, and that's fine. But on other days, on other weeks, you might start drifting off. And the danger is that you drift off the path of your plans, your dreams. Let's not waste those plans. Let's not waste those dreams. But the danger is, as I found a couple of days this week, even though I do stuff, I got myself out of bed, I exercised, and then I got on and I did some projects, but I did find myself just feeling a bit listless in the morning, for 2 mornings straight, just checking behind me. And that worried me a little bit. So, ironically enough, it motivated me. It motivated me to snap out of it, Clive, before it becomes a habit. Because I know from bitter experience that when you've got no purpose, or you're struggling in life and you're lying in bed in the morning, the more consistently that happens, the harder it is to get out of bed and to do stuff and slowly but surely you can let yourself go a bit. You've got to keep up that motivation. You've got to keep up that sense of purpose. And a little bit of structure can help. It's that balance between too much structure that it cages you and you don't feel the freedom and you can't breathe, and just enough structure that you think you've got the freedom that you need to kind of explore and do things and wake up and decide what you want to do this day to that day. But at the same time, when you don't have that, just keeps you on track. It's like putting little markers in a map. You want to go from A to B, and on that journey, you want to stop off at a few things. And the further away those points are, those stop-off points, the more you can explore in between and go off and do other things. And then you go to the first point and then refocus the direction you're going. And again, in between that point and the next point, you can go off and do other stuff. And the balance is making sure those points aren't so close together that you don't have the freedom to go off and do things organically, and at the same time have those points too far apart that you go off tangentially and you can't get back onto the route that you were meant to be going and you get lost. If you're using that analogy of the journey, it's a delicate balance to have off those stop-off points far enough apart that you can fill the gaps with exploration and other things and rest and just chilling out and doing what you want to do, but at the same time, bring you back in line to where you want to go ultimately in life. And even if ultimately in life it's just to have purpose and meaning in your retirement, and that's destination, well, that's fine. I think it helps to kind of look at it in that way. I think one of the easiest things to do if you retire is to have a change of scene straight away. Say, for instance, you retired and you go and buy a house in France, I don't know, and you decide to do it up or whatever. You've got a whole new landscape, a whole new project, a whole new focus in life. I think that's a lot easier to maintain a purpose and focus if you've got a project. The same if you go traveling, if you go, right, that's it, I'm quitting, I'm selling everything up, I'm going to travel the world, or that's it, I'm going off to Vietnam or Thailand or the Philippines or wherever you want to go, Costa Rica, Spain, Portugal. It gives you a purpose and a project. Yeah, but if, like me, that's not something that you could do from the off-go, it becomes a bit more difficult. Unless you can radically change your life to give you purpose, you have to be a bit more subtle and cunning with finding that purpose. As I said, I've still got some old structures of my life that exist, such as taking my kid to school and stuff like that are for the next 2-3 years sort of sacrosanct. They can't change. And in a way, it's like I've removed 70% of the structure of my life, which was work and all of that, but I've still got the framework of that old life. 20%, 25% of that framework of my old life still in place. And so I sometimes feel I'm sort of in between. And as I said, I think it'd be a lot easier if you're in a scenario where you just went, right, that's it, I'm off. Stage 2 of my life, I'm off for another adventure. I think it's a bit more difficult if you have to ease your way into it, because that old structure with that big empty gap, that vacuum of where you didn't go to work, but still elements of that old structure in place, can sort of lull you into trapping you where you are without any meaning or purpose, because there's nothing to do for 70% of the time. And that's what you've got to try to avoid, because establishing a new routine or a new structure, not merely about filling up the time. Absolutely not. It's a fundamental pillar for maintaining well-being and preventing days from blurring into an aimless continuum, which is what you want to avoid. In the absence of an external work-imposed structure, what you need is an intentionally designed personal routine. It kind of acts as a critical anchor, preventing drift and enabling the pursuit of a new purpose and focus. So that's what we're trying to achieve here. The primary challenge identified is that loss of work structure leading to feelings of aimlessness, and that's what we want to avoid in life. One of the strategies that you can do starts before retirement, and it's like having a pre-retirement plan. Even map out what you think is a general structure of your week. What will your week look like when you retire? I never really planned it out. As I said, I wanted to see how things were going to go organically. And maybe that's the right thing to do, but maybe give yourself a week, 2 weeks to get over that honeymoon period, then hit that weekly structure that you designed before you retired. That could well be a solution. And then structure those passion projects. As I said, if you've got those bigger projects, structure them. When are you going to do them? How are you going to achieve them? And again, don't make them too difficult for you or burdensome. No one's paying you to do it. There's no real timeline on these things. So feel free to do it in a relaxing manner. This mimics the discipline of a job, helping it to maintain focus and giving you a consistent engagement. Another important element, of course, to make sure you structure in some fitness into your life. As I said, it's really important to maintain some fitness, and that's a good way of maintaining your mental health. So there's something in psychology called the Perma Model, developed by a guy called Martin Seligman. It's a robust framework from positive psychology, and it offers basically a holistic guide for cultivating overall well-being and a defined purpose in retirement. It basically breaks down fulfillment and purpose into actionable components, and it's called Perma V, P-E-R-M-A-V. Basically, the Perma stands for P, positive emotions, E, engagement, R, relationships, M, meaning, A, accomplishment, and V, vitality. So, for instance, positive emotions. This is about cultivating joy and optimism and overall positive feelings. You know, whether you do a workout routine like I do, when I'm doing it, it's like, oh my God, what a nightmare, this is so difficult. But when I finish, it's like amazing. Traveling to new places, like I said, I plan to go away. I'm having you hold me accountable for this. Engage in hobbies, cherished hobbies. These are all actionable examples for retirees. So that's ways to kind of find positive emotions. The next thing is engagement, learning a new skill, as I've said before, having a growth mindset, all about learning new things, learning a new musical instrument, learning a language, all these kind of things. Writing, creative, new sport. I know everybody's into, what's it called, paddleboarding and stuff like that. Is it paddleboarding? Sort of tennis, like children's tennis, but all adults are into it. That kind of offers you and fulfills that engagement element. Another one is relationships. Again, joining clubs or groups or regularly connecting with old families and friends. As I said, families and friends that I've sort of neglected. And again, I hope to achieve both those things by traveling and connecting with family again. So, you know, killing two birds with one stone, as it were. The meaning could be volunteering for a cause or something like that. Mentoring younger generations, engaging in philanthropy. If you've got any money, you haven't got any money. My philanthropy dedicated to paying for my kids at university. Advocating for community improvements. I'm the member of a voluntary management committee on a sports venue that we have in the village that the council was going to close. Now, I did this before, you know, while I was working years ago, and we maintained and run it for 8 years now, and it breaks even and all of that, and we basically saved it for the community. So there's immense satisfaction and meaning in the fact that at least I'm contributing to my local community in some way. And then accomplishment. Pursuing a degree. Somebody said to me, have I ever considered going back to, you know, learning and getting more qualifications and stuff like that? After doing my law conversion degree, I kind of thought to myself, I'm never having to do that again. I remember thinking that when I did my university degree in the first place. When I finished the last essay, thinking I'm never going to have to do an essay again, like for work or anything, ever again. And then, yeah, years later, I decided to go back to university, do a distance learning course and get my law degree. And I ended up doing it again. But trust me, the drinks after that last exam were something special. But yeah, maybe learn something. I've done a few little mini online courses to give you a little certificate. You know, I'm a certified person in some basic level of AI, thanks to Microsoft. So I've got a little certificate for that. So yeah, there are little online courses that you can do and pursue, or you can go full Monty and, you know, go and do like a online degree or something like that. So that'll give you a sense of accomplishment. And then the V in your Perma V is vitality. Again, regular exercise, make it a habit. As I said, I hope to be sharing my exercise routine that I've developed specifically for me. Might be useful to you, and I want to share it on this channel. Let me know down below if you are interested in that. You know, and vitality is really crucial. It's all connected to that regular exercise, healthy eating, adequate sleep. I do struggle with my sleep a bit because I'd sort of get up a bit early. I think the trick is to get out of bed though when I do wake up. Mindful practices. So again, look, you don't have to kind of sit there with incense burning and your legs crossed and stuff like that. For me, sitting in the garden on a day like this with a cup of tea in my hand, trying to empty my mind of things before and things after and being in the moment, that's fine. Whatever floats your boat, baby. And I say, and if you are struggling, mental health or isolation or whatever it is, seek help. Don't be an ostrich. Trust me, please. Do not stick your head in the sand. If you think you want to talk to someone about something, you've got mental issues or you're not even sure, but you think you might have, please talk to someone. It will help. Talk, you know, especially if you talk to a professional, it will help big time. So there you go. That takes a kind of academic psychological paper and turns it into a practical thing that you can do. As I said, now I'm a few months into retirement. I began to realise that just relying on a purpose in life coming to you organically and maintaining that purpose in life organically and hoping that it just stays on track is a fool's errand, my friends. It's a bit like, you know, not having a tiller on your boat. By all means, you want to sail off to adventures new. There's a danger in just letting your boat drift aimlessly. You do need a direction, even if you're going to zigzag, tic-tac to your final destination. And I think hopefully there's some useful strategies there, useful ideas, useful conversation in maintaining purpose and having a purpose in your retirement life. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comments down below. And as ever, if you like this video, please hit the likes, because I like it, YouTube likes it, and it helps people like you, you, to find videos just like this. And of course, if you're new to my channel, do me the great honor, please hit that subscribe button, toggle that notification bell, and that way you'll know when I go live with videos just like this. Talking of videos just like this, why don't you check out these videos here? See these ones here, yeah? You're gonna love them. Thanks for watching.